Question 11. The impacts of climate change can be managed through adaptation and mitigation. Explain, using examples, how these two approaches might work. 8 marks. Okay, so this question is asking us to consider how we can manage climate change through adaptation and mitigation. We're going to go into detail about what adaptation and mitigation is, but let's just define them briefly now. So adaptation is about adjusting to changes in the environment. So climate change has many impacts, such as sea level rise. How can we adapt to this or adjust to this? Whereas mitigation is making the impacts of climate change less severe by actually preventing the cause of climate change, so reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And it's really important for GCSE geography that you know the difference between adaptation and mitigation. So we now need to explain, using specific examples, how these approaches might work. We've got 8 marks this question, so we're going to make sure we have a balanced answer by looking at both adaptation and mitigation. So let's start with our definition of adaptation, which is adjusting to changes in the environment. So as this question is an explained question, we want to make sure that the strategies we are talking about are explained linked to the question. So for example, we said one impact of climate change is sea level rise. So one adaptation approach might be to build houses on stilts or to build cedar fences, as this can reduce the impacts of climate change, of sea level rise and coastal erosion. We could also write new agricultural methods, so how new agricultural methods can be used to adapt to more extreme weather that places might experience as an impact of climate change. So let's go on to mitigation now. So as we mentioned before, mitigation is about making the impacts of climate change less severe by preventing or reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So we need to think about what strategies reduce the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. So for example, if we switch to renewable energy, this means that maybe less fossil fuels are burnt, and fossil fuels release carbon dioxide. So renewable energy is likely to reduce carbon dioxide, which will limit the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Another strategy we could also talk about is planting trees. So trees take in carbon dioxide and release oxygen. So this means that they are reducing the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and therefore reducing the greenhouse gas effect that causes climate change. So there are many other points you could also write for mitigation. You could mention that we use carbon capture, and this takes in carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. You could also mention international agreements such as the Paris Agreement, and this also sets targets to limit greenhouse gas emissions from countries. So looking at the marks here, we've got loads of points down here. For adaptation, we've defined adaptation, and then we've given 2 examples: building houses on stilts, new agricultural methods, and we have explained them as well. For mitigation, we have also defined it, which will give us a mark, and we've given 2 strategies, and we've explained how they work in terms of mitigation, how they reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So that would give us our 8 marks.